Hello and welcome to the Patience to Prosperity podcast, where we learn how to act in opposition of our limiting beliefs in order to reach our fullest potential. Hey guys, it's Lizzie. This week's episode is going to be one that might hit close to home for a lot of us. If you're anything like me, you might experience anxiety far too much in your life because we all experience anxiety to a certain extent. It is only classified as a disorder when we are clinically diagnosed with it. But needless to say, it's something that gets in the way of day-to-day life. And if anxiety is an emotion that is very prevalent for you, it's one that stands out the most when thinking about what emotions you feel most often, then today's episode is going to be one that you're going to want to stick around for. And I do want to say before I start this episode, today has been a particularly anxious day for me. And I thought that there was no better time than to record this episode on a day where I'm feeling really anxious, because I'll be able to actually put my own feelings right now into words and hopefully translate that into ways that you can resonate with, that you can understand when you're going through this wave of emotion as I am. Because anxiety can be really paralyzing. And that's what really sucks about it. We go through this kind of spiral where when something makes us anxious, it interferes with our ability to get things done, and not being able to get these things done makes us more anxious. So it's this huge loop of anxiety that we experience. And I guess I just wanted to start off the episode by noting that, because I think that it really just kind of puts things into perspective if you're someone that's listening to this right now that goes through anxiety, or someone who just has friends who explain that they're anxious some days, or, you know, a boyfriend or a girlfriend that tells you that they deal with anxiety. It is really important for you to actually understand what that feeling is like, because from an outside perspective, you still won't be able to fully understand how debilitating and paralyzing anxiety can be, but you can at least be more understanding of how they act some ways when they're anxious, what their minds may go to when they're anxious, because a lot of the times we just go to the most irrational things when we're in an anxious spiral, because we're not ourselves. When we are anxious, we are not ourselves. And something that I experience when I have a really anxious day sometimes, I can feel like the anxious version of me is the realest version of me, and that makes me spiral even more, because I don't want to be the anxious version of myself. I don't want to see myself in that light. But since anxiety is something that I experience so prominently and so frequently, I have started to kind of associate and identify myself with the identity that I hold while I'm my most anxious self. And it can cause me to spiral and kind of feel that sort of disassociative feeling that can coincide with anxiety a lot. And if you're not familiar with that feeling, or if you are, it's kind of when you kind of feel like a shell of a person. You almost feel like you're watching your life from another point of view. You feel disconnected from yourself and from the world around you. You feel like it's not one of the same. You're just someone going through life, and it's so hard to put into words. It's really hard to put into words, but I think that's what makes me feel so much more anxious when I feel that way, because I can't even pinpoint what exactly is wrong. And that kind of brings me to my next point. Sometimes you can be anxious and not identify what is making you anxious, and that just amplifies that anxiety to a whole nother level. Like, the feeling that I've been feeling most recently is that nothing in my life is necessarily wrong, but nothing feels quite right. And I explained that to a few of my friends, and they were like, wow, you just put it into words. because nothing is inherently wrong in my life right now. I'm just going through a transitional period, as all of my friends are as well. And it's kind of just making me feel like I don't have control over anything. And I think that's where anxiety plays a role, is when we feel like we are not in control of something. So our brains kind of go to these irrational places to try to justify it, and it makes us feel like not only do we not have the capability now to get things done, we also can't even really regulate our emotions because we haven't even identified what is making us feel this way. So that brings me to kind of my first point of today. You have to take notice to things that are making you anxious. You have to be able to identify what distinctive thing set you off that made you feel anxious. And also, you have to identify what emotions you're feeling when you feel pent-up emotions coming through. Sometimes we just go to anxiety because that's an emotion that we feel very frequently. So we just label it as stress or anxiety before actually rationally looking at it and trying to understand deeper where it's coming from and what exactly we feel. But going off of that, you have to know what set your anxiety off to begin with. What was the trigger? For example, this morning, the reason why I feel so anxious today is because I accidentally slept through my 8 a.m. class today. I'm a college student and I really try my best to go to all my classes because it makes me more anxious when I am not in class when I know I'm supposed to be. Because I don't know what I'm missing in class. I don't know if there's a piece of information that I missed, an assignment that I missed. It just makes me way more anxious to not be in class when I'm supposed to be there than to take the day off even if I really need it. And I know everyone's different, but I'm just explaining what made me anxious today to kind of put it into perspective for you. So when I woke up this morning and I realized I slept through my 8 a.m., I already knew that I was going to have an anxious day ahead of me. I already knew that things were going to be a little off and that I was going to have to figure it out from there. And I had the power. When I woke up, I told myself I had the power to transform my day into one that is highly anxious and very emotional, or set myself up to combat that anxiety the best that I possibly can before it gets even worse, because I identified it the second I woke up. And that's not to say that every single day you know before you even get out of bed in the morning that it's going to be an anxious day. Sometimes things just build up and it can be really hard to identify what exactly is making you anxious when you're kind of just going through the motions, when your day feels super fast paced. But something I like to tell myself is that no amount of anxiety or stress will change the future. That is not in my control. Me being more anxious and more stressed out about a situation is not going to ease it. It's not going to make it any better. It's just going to make it harder for me to go through it, to navigate through it. And no amount of guilt or shame can change your past. That is a piece of advice, affirmation, whatever you want to call it. That little mantra has saved me so much in times of high anxiety. And if you're someone right now that's just having a really anxious day and came to this episode to try to ease your mind, I want you to tell yourself that and to remind yourself that when you feel that anxiety creeping in. Because as much as we hate to feel anxious, since it's an emotion that we feel a lot in our lives, we deem it as familiar. Unconsciously, we deem it as familiar, and we run to that familiar emotion. That only heightens it. That only makes it worse. And sometimes we're afraid of getting anxious, which makes us more anxious. We will literally be having a decent day and then just thinking about what anxiety feels like and how we were feeling so anxious the other day and how it affected our day. And now all of a sudden that anxiety crept its way through. So not only should we take notice to our triggers, what triggers our anxiety, that also has to do with what times in your life you feel the most anxious. You have to come clear with what settings make you feel the most anxious. Maybe you're a person who experiences a lot of social anxiety, so you know that big social settings make you anxious. Having to talk to people just one-on-one might make you anxious. And knowing what things make you anxious makes it easier to predict when that anxiety is going to creep in so that it's not completely blindsiding you, and you can do things to help self-soothe you even before that anxiety comes in, so that you're meeting it on kind of an even playing field, if you will, that allows you to kind of think more rationally, to not get so caught up in all of the irrational bullshit that your anxiety is trying to feed you, because it is important to note that your anxiety is lying to you. Your anxiety is trying to make you feel small. It's trying to dim you down to make you feel like you are incapable of doing all of the things that you have taught yourself time and time again you are capable of doing. Your anxiety is lying to you. You are not yourself when you're anxious, like I said in the beginning. But since anxiety feels so incredibly real, I would argue anxiety feels like the biggest controller of our emotions, the biggest controller of our thoughts. That makes us believe it. And like I say in a ton of my episodes, you are not your thoughts, but your thoughts do create your reality. And what I mean by this is that your thoughts are not always true, but sometimes we fall on our thoughts being true too often, and then it creates these anxiety spirals because one thought will come in that makes us anxious, and then we believe it, and then we go to this, that, and the other thing, and now all of a sudden we're shaking with anxiety, trying to get through our day, trying to do all the things that we set out for ourselves that day. And that's when it can really hit you sometimes too, is when you least expect it, and when you already set a to-do list for yourself to get a bunch of things done, and then all of a sudden this anxiety creeps in off of something that triggered it earlier in that day. And now you have a whole to-do list of things, but you were so blindsided by your own anxiety that you feel like you can't even get it done. And I want to note that when we identify the emotion that we are feeling as anxiety, it has the power to either amplify that emotion or to help us move through it. And I'm going to explain this further. So, in means of helping us move through it, why would identifying this emotion help us move through it? Well, the reason I say this is because when we identify this emotion as anxiety, we know the things that are going to either help us or really hurt us. So for example, if you know that you're having an anxious day, you know it's not going to help you to go put yourself in an anxious situation, to go talk to new people for the first time. But you can fall back on other things like meditating, journaling, like talking to a friend, or listening to calm music. Stuff like that is going to help ease your anxiety. And instead of avoiding anxiety-inducing encounters, when we face them head on and use the tools that I am setting out for you today, when we face them head on and we use the tools on our tool belt, the tools that we know help us, while we are about to encounter something that we know is going to make us anxious, that is how we combat our anxiety. So it's not to say that we should be avoiding anxiety-inducing encounters. We should be facing them head on, because then when we get through them, when we teach ourselves that we are capable of regulating our emotions, that we are capable of self-soothing, then we are teaching ourselves that we are safe in these types of environments, that we are safe in these social situations, that we are safe in all of the ways that we identified as anxiety-inducing experiences. And that is how we become more comfortable with putting ourselves through these things moving on. Because we can't just completely ignore certain anxiety-inducing experiences in our life. Certain things are out of our control. Certain things we're not able to predict before we go into them. And it might cause us anxiety, and now we are left with, okay, what do I do now? How do I combat this anxiety without making it worse? Without identifying it as anxiety and then making it worse? Actually going down to its level and asking myself, what do I need right now? What is my anxiety telling me I need right now? Because every single time that an emotion comes up, it is asking for a release. Emotions only get pent up, they only feel really heavy when they are needing to be released. So some ways that I like to ease my anxiety is, one, by journaling or talking out loud about it. So I was never really put into therapy at a young age. Now I'm above the age of 18, so it's in my hands. But since I was too young at one point to really make decisions for myself, I wasn't in therapy for a large portion of my life that I think I should have been. So I resorted to journaling or talking out loud. Vulnerability was something that was really hard for me my entire life and still is, honestly. And I have an episode about vulnerability that I think is really important and vital to your healing journey. So please check that episode out. It's one of my first episodes if that's something that you struggle with, because vulnerability is the one thing that actually sets you free. Because when you are not allowing yourself to be vulnerable, you are literally making your mind a prison. You are making your mind a place that is not safe, that is too scary to face, and especially too scary to express to other people for many reasons that I tackle in that episode. So I highly recommend checking that out. But needless to say, why I brought up the concept of vulnerability is because I was not in therapy and it was really hard for me to be vulnerable with other people. So I resorted to not only journaling, but actually talking out loud and using my voice memos in my phone, which I think is a big reason why I actually found the drive to start my own podcast, was because I literally started off by recording voice memos of me just talking while I was in the car driving, when I was having a really anxious day and I couldn't really voice it because I was so stuck in my head. Because when you are really anxious, you are so in your head, and sometimes that makes it even harder to understand your own thoughts, to really understand what thoughts are most prominent right now, what's really going through your head, because we just feel super anxious. So many things are coming through at once, and we're not even really taking notice to them. We are just defaulting to the fact that it's anxiety. So that's my first tip, is maybe opening your voice memos and seeing if that helps you. Because sometimes things come out when you talk things out loud to yourself or to other people. Sometimes, and most of the time, things come out that you don't even realize you were thinking. The next thing I like to do to ease some of my anxiety is to listen to calm music. I think that the music that you listen to, the vibration, the frequency of the music that you listen to has a lot to do with how your mind feels that day. I know personally, if I am listening to really low vibrational music, it can have the power to really transform my day and to kind of bring down my vibe, make me feel a little sad, because, you know, when you are listening to a song that has lyrics that really just hit home, it makes you think of past experiences that you have attached the emotion of sadness to, and like, That's not to say that you can't really listen to low vibrational songs, but when you're having a really anxious day, it might only amplify that anxiety and make you feel like that anxiety is now composed of sadness as well, which can make us spiral even more because it makes us feel like, oh, well, yesterday I was having a really good high vibrational day, and now all of a sudden I'm not only anxious, but I'm really sad, and now I just don't even feel like myself, and I feel like I'm completely losing my mind. And maybe I'm just speaking for myself here, but I feel like the person listening can also relate to that. So, if you do, I highly recommend that you make playlists that are tailored to these anxious days so that now you have a little building block for yourself. You have a little something to fall back on. You know, oh my God, okay, I feel a little anxious today. Maybe let me go to my calming playlist because I know that it's going to make me feel better, because you set that playlist up specifically so that you would come to it on days where you feel a little anxious. So now you have conditioned yourself to know that when you open that playlist and you press play, it's going to make you feel a little bit better. That's why it's so important to make a playlist specifically tailored to those anxious days, because you made it so that it would help you self-soothe. But anyways, I digress. Another thing that helps me feel a little less anxious is by doing one thing every day that makes tomorrow a little easier for me. For example, if you know that picking out an outfit in the morning makes you really stressed for time, which then makes you really anxious, pick out your outfits the day before. If you are someone that gets really anxious trying to scramble to make yourself something to eat in the morning, make yourself some overnight oats the night before. Or maybe just cut up some fruit the night before so that that's one less step you have to do in the morning. It doesn't have to be a whole task that you get done the night before, but just making the steps a little bit easier for the next day will help you feel at ease. Because time is a huge thing with anxiety. A really bad habit that I have because I'm an anxious person is that when I'm driving especially, I've gotten a little bit better at it now, thank God, but I used to speed a lot while I was driving because I was so anxious to get to the next destination that I had in mind. Even if I didn't have to be there by a certain time, even if it was just me leaving the gym and going home, I was so anxious to get there that I would speed on my way home. And that is just putting myself in harm. That's just putting others in harm. That's just not something you should ever default to, but I would because of my anxiety. Time is a huge thing with anxiety. Anxiety makes us feel like we're running out of time, and that makes us do things impulsively. That makes us rush the outcome of things, rush ourselves, which makes our anxiety even worse when we're rushing ourselves. And I know it's easier said than done to just tell you to slow down. I know firsthand it's easier said than done. But a lot of the times I like to use this technique of just inhaling and exhaling. And as I inhale, I say the word slow. As I exhale, I say the word down. And I just keep on repeating that to myself. So it's inhale, slow, exhale, down, slow down. Just keep telling yourself, slow down, because as you're doing that and using that technique, you're also using that breathing technique that helps regulate your nervous system, which will help ease some of that anxiety at the same time. I like to use that technique, especially when I do yoga or meditate, stuff like that. Some other things that go without saying when trying to ease some anxiety is really paying attention to your sleep. Not only sleeping, but actually getting good sleep. So doing whatever it takes for you to get good sleep. That has a lot to do with your sleep environment. Is your bed comfortable? Do you like your sheets? I recently changed to satin sheets and it changed my life. Maybe spraying or putting on some lavender essential oils at night will help you sleep. Maybe drinking some tea before bed. Maybe journaling before bed or reading before bed. It's really important to put your phone down at least 30 minutes before bed because there's been psychological studies done that have proven that when we are on our phone right before we close our eyes to go to sleep, our brain is stimulated at the same rate that it is stimulated when we are running a marathon, which is insane to me. But those blue light rays run deep, I guess, because it really wakes our brains up. And when we're trying to calm our minds and go to sleep and be in this restful place, going on our phones before bed is the last thing we should be doing. And I know we hear that all the time, so try not to shut me out too much when I say that, but just make sure you're getting your 8 hours and doing anything that you can in your power to help you get a better sleep every night. Because rest is huge. Rest is not something that we add into the process. Rest is part of the process. We have to rest in order to show up at our best every single day. Another thing that helps me a lot with my anxiety, especially because I am a girl who struggles with PCOS, which is just a hormonal condition if you're not familiar with it. I'll do a whole episode on that down the line, but I really make sure that I get a high protein breakfast within the hour that I wake up every single day, because it lowers your cortisol, and your cortisol is highest in the morning. Cortisol is your stress hormone. It's not a bad hormone. It is just our hormone that controls our stress. And it's highest in the morning because we haven't eaten, because we're at rest for hours upon end, and our blood sugar is low, which makes our cortisol high. So having a balanced high protein breakfast within the hour that you wake up will set that cortisol at an even playing field for the rest of your day, which will help, because a lot of the times we forget that food plays a huge role in our anxiety. When I haven't eaten something in a few hours, I am inevitably more irritable, more anxious, and ultimately just not myself. And sometimes I forget that it's because I haven't eaten something in a few hours, and I just need to eat something in order to feel like I can even put a sentence together sometimes. When I'm really hungry, sometimes it's even hard to carry on conversations with people. And last but not least, this is one that you might not want to hear, but sometimes just doing the tasks that are making you anxious will help ease your anxiety. And that is so much easier said than done, like so many things in life. But when you just let yourself procrastinate, when you let that time pass you by, even though you know you can be doing the thing that is making you anxious, that's a form of self-sabotage. You have to assess what it is about this task that is making you anxious, and then give yourself clarity on that. Maybe it's making you anxious because there's so many steps, and you just need to break them down into small steps that are more manageable for you. Maybe it's making you anxious because it's something you've never done before, and the unfamiliarity of it is making you really scared because you don't know how to do it right yet, and that means it's going to be harder. But that's not true. You haven't even tried yet, so you actually might be really good at this thing, and you're just giving up on yourself before even trying, which is creating a low sense of confidence in yourself, which translates to even more anxiety. Don't you see how everything kind of comes back to anxiety at the end of the day? We're either amplifying it or easing it, like I said in the beginning. So break things down into smaller steps that make it more manageable for you, more tangible for you, and ask other people for help when you need help. People are there to help you. People want to help you. It makes them feel good about themselves when they feel like they're doing something to help other people. Ask people for help, because then you not only get a new outside perspective on this thing, you get new tactics, new techniques on how to go about this thing that you might have never thought of on your own. That might help you going down the line when you are faced with a task just like this one. And before I close this episode out, I just want to remind you that you have gone through every single thing in your life that you once thought was impossible, that you once thought you were not capable of going through. You have been through it. You have conquered it, and you have come out a better person because of it. So don't let this anxiety make you feel incapable. Don't believe this anxiety when it comes through. Teach yourself that you are stronger than what your anxiety is telling you by doing these things anyways, by doing the things you have set out for yourself anyways, despite your anxiety, because that's how you teach yourself that you have the capability within you, you have the strength within you to get things done, to stick to your word, to be true to yourself, to amplify your life and bring yourself towards your highest good, even on days where you don't feel your best. But anyways, that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I really hope that if you were listening to this while having an anxious day, or if you were just someone who experiences anxiety a lot, or has people in your life that deal with anxiety, I hope that you learned something from this and that at least one tactic has stuck with you that you are able to implement in your life now at times where you feel your anxiety creeping in. And I just hope that you understand your power and that you're able to come back to yourself and give yourself exactly what you need in those moments of high anxiety. We're all in this together, and you are not alone. As much as anxiety can make you feel so isolated sometimes, you are not alone. So that's all I have for you guys. Feel free to shoot me a DM, as always, at Patience to Prosperity on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok, so go check out my TikTok page for little quotes, inspiration, advice, all of the above. It'll all be there. Everything is linked in the show notes below. Please follow the show so that you get updated when I post an episode every Monday. And please leave a review on the show because it really helps me reach like-minded people just like you. Leave the show a 5-star rating if you enjoyed today's episode, and check out the journal prompts that I specifically cultivate for each episode in the show notes below. I really try to make those journal prompts go along with what I had to say in the episode so that it feels more tangible for you, because I know a lot of the times it can just feel like there's so much information being thrown at you at once when you listen to a podcast like mine where we kind of get deeper into topics that make you think a lot. So that's why I have those journal prompts for you, so that you can come back at your own time and open up your journal and get your own thoughts out on what I had to say today about this episode. So it's like a little hands-on experience. We're kind of working together to heal and to grow, which is what this entire podcast is built upon. We're just growing together. And growth is not linear, just to remind yourself that. You're gonna have hiccups in the road, but teaching yourself that you can get past those and doing things anyways is how you build that confidence and get through them the next time around. But anyways, thank you guys so much for listening, and as always, come as you are and leave a little more healed.